Hello everyone. Welcome. Simon Jacobson is my name. And being that we are just a few days before the holiday of Shavuot, so let's see this as a Pre-Shavuot Workshop. I want to dedicate the class to a soul that passed on today, of a dear friend of ours, someone who's attended these classes, Steve Lazarus' mother, Yehudit Bat Yisrael, whose neshama has returned to its original place, and may her soul benefit from the merit of all those that are studying here with us and the words that I will share. So every year Shavuot is the holiday that commemorates the giving of the Torah at Sinai, which took place 3,342 years ago. And by all accounts, Sinai maybe was the greatest. Got the number wrong? Huh? I said 32:24 or 42:24. The Hebrew year was 2448. So what's that? 5772 minus 2448. What do you get? 3224. I said 3242. Okay, 3224. Mark keeps me honest. So it's maybe, besides being a watershed moment, it was perhaps the greatest event in history. People don't even necessarily know the impact and consequences. But I would submit that we would not have a country like the United States today. We wouldn't have the freedoms that are guaranteed, that we take so for granted, were it not for Matan Torah, for Sinai. And there's an interesting book, a powerful, fascinating book called On Two Wings, written by a scholar, Michael Novak. He's not a Jewish scholar. I'm saying that intentionally because there's more credibility than if a Jew writes it. And he makes the case, not theory, but he actually cites letters and correspondence and documents of the American founding fathers that this country, its basic underpinnings are built on, as he calls it, Jewish metaphysics. Ideas that are directly from the Torah, not from Christianity. So you can check out the book, but the basic case is that the concepts and ideas that Sinai introduced to the world, which really the pioneer was Abraham, but then Abraham passed it on to his children, the ideas of justice, charity, helping those that have less than us, the idea of individuality, of freedom, guaranteed freedoms, that each of us is created in the divine image. Essentially Declaration of Independence, all people are created equal and have inalienable rights endowed to them by the Creator, by the virtue of their being the freedoms that we, as I say, so cherish. These are Sinai principles. And it's important to pay tribute to that, but there's more to the story. There's much about Sinai that has yet to be revealed, that has yet to take hold. And if Sinai did bring such foundational and revolutionary principles to the world, what else did Sinai bring that the world is not yet aware of? Frankly, what principles that Jews themselves are not aware of? The fact is that most Jews are not even appreciative of much of our heritage. So this forces us to go dig deeper into what Sinai is all about, to the holiday of Shavuos. As I said, see this as a type of Shavuos workshop. But above all, the relevance of these events that took place so many millennia ago to our lives today. And there are many ways we can address this, but I'd like to address it to a particular lens that I've been honored to be involved in the last, I would say, year in a more aggressive way, and it's been accelerating. And you're going to hear more about it from me and from the Meaningful Life Center and from hopefully others as well. And that is that this Shavuos is also a centennial. So besides being 3,224, right? It's also 100 years from a particular event, I would say the beginning of a revolutionary magnum opus, tour de force, that was delivered 100 years ago, exactly, Shavuos. The English date then was May 22nd. Every year those dates change, but Shavuos is a 100-year centennial. And it's known by these words, and if you haven't heard them before, you'll hear them now for the first time. I'll explain them, and you'll probably hear them many, many more times. It's called, for short, the nickname of it is called Ayin Beis. Ayin Beis in Hebrew is 2 letters, Ayin Beis, that refer to number 72. Referring to the year, this is the Hebrew year 5,772. So for short, it's called 72, Ayin Beis. But 100 years ago, it was 5,672, so that's called Ayin Beis. And Hemshech Ayin Beis refers to a series of discourses. You can call it the Mount Everest of Kabbalistic and Chassidic, of Chassidism, being that it's literally a Titanic. And I use that word very precisely, as I discussed last week, but I'll elaborate more. It is a discourse that began to be delivered Shavuos 2012, and it would continue and span for over 4 years, almost 4 years, 144 discourses in this long series. And then it continues another volume that continues and goes. It was only written and not delivered. By whom? By a great mystic, a great sage, a visionary of the highest order. The name is Rebbe Rashab, which is an acronym for Rabbi Sholom Dov Ber. I don't like to use adjectives because they sound sometimes like platitudes or exaggeration. But nevertheless, because this is a discourse, this is a text that is really unknown to the public, and I would say even unknown to the private as well. To say the word is brilliant is an underestimation. It's beyond brilliant. There's revolutionary principles in these discourses that are, I believe, that if they're presented properly, translated correctly, deciphered, and made accessible, are on the equivalent level of Einstein's theory of relativity and some of the other greatest breakthroughs in the last 100 years, in their concept, in their psychological insight, in their cosmic, and just in general understanding the visible forces that shape existence. When you read in quantum mechanics and physics, all deal with theoretical physics, with the forces at work that are invisible to us, but we theorize about them. And many of the theories may sound even bizarre. In Ayin Beis, these are common. Almost every page is filled with theories on that level. So on one hand, it's extremely esoteric, but today, if it was taught 100 years ago, people would think of it as nuts. They think of it some type of religious fantasies. But today, with the knowledge we have in physics and quantum mechanics and the unconscious, even the little we know, this material in Ayin Beis is mind-blowing. So my intention is, and I've already begun working around it almost a year ago, now I'm bringing it to fruition, is to use the Centennial as a springboard to launch an initiative called IyonBeis.com. So you're hearing it for the first time. Tomorrow we'll send out a sneak preview with a trailer, like a movie trailer about it, that is going to both not just translate but apply these ideas in language that each of us can understand. It's written in its original Hebrew, but that doesn't mean it cannot be deciphered. And I submit, as I say, that when people start reading it, it has literally revolutionary impact in many, many ways. And I'll discuss some examples here. So really, being that you're all such loyal attendees to my class, so you'll hear about it before everyone else does. So this is like somewhat of a sneak preview, And since it's the 100 years of Shavuos, as I said, I thought that could be a good lens to look into Sinai and appreciate it in levels that we may never have appreciated before. So I began around a year ago teaching a class once a week in this discourse in English. We even created a YouTube channel called Ayin Beis, which has now approximately 125 chapters of this long discourse, which, as I said, is around in printed form around 1,500 pages. Also unfinished symphony, I should add. It was never concluded, but nevertheless there's plenty there to deal with. Once we finish the 1,500 pages, we'll deal with what's missing, what was not said yet. And I've been teaching this, and also this website is really filled with tools. I want to create some type of for lack of a better word, called a Chassidic, a type of platform where people can participate, contribute, argue, discuss. Obviously, we'll create the outline and framework, but it's meant to be something that everyone, whatever field you're in, can participate in a real collaborative effort. So I've been working pretty hard over time the last few weeks with my team, and we're pretty proud of what we're developing, and you'll let me know what you think. And obviously it's a work in progress. We can't even call it beta yet. It's still only a sneak preview because there's more to come, and obviously nothing is as good until you test it in real time. So I really would appreciate to get anybody's feedback here, comments, rebuttals, suggestions, critique, etc., etc. So obviously I've raised the bar very high by comparing it to the theory of relativity, because we all know that is once in history such a theory is developed. But I really say I say it without regrets. I really believe it has that capacity. Ideas that Freud describes about the unconscious, I would say, is almost like child's play compared to the Rebbe Rashab's development of the unconscious. And you have to really see it to believe it. So I don't want to just say it. I will try to demonstrate it. That my job now is to prove what I just said. It's nice to make these statements, but now we got to live up to them. And under the glaring eye of 7 billion people, of which we're all members of this world, so hopefully we'll get this done. And I'm very excited about it, as you can tell. So that's somewhat of a backdrop of what I'm going to discuss. So now, with that in mind, I'll refer to it Ayin Beis, because that's the way it's described. As I said, the full name of it is Hemshech Ayin Beis. For short, Ayin Beis. So we can call this Project 72, and consider yourselves as the first members of Club 72. Okay? And hopefully we can together actually create a real revolution. And I don't just mean on an academic level and in a theoretical level, but also personally. Because it all comes down to our personal lives and so on. So, some of the biggest questions of life are, not some, I would say all the biggest questions of life are addressed in Ayin Beis. But I'm going to focus on here is a few of these ideas, especially as I said, in the spirit of Shavuos. Since the discourse began on Shavuos, the whole discourse begins with a Talmudic statement, with a medrash on Shavuos, where it starts with B'shah Sheikdimu. That when the Jews stood at Sinai, the famous line was when God asked them to show them the Torah, they said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do, and then we will understand. So he begins the whole discourse, this classic discourse. He begins with a question on this statement, and the questions on this. The Medrash says that B'shah Sheikdimu, when the Jewish people preceded saying Nasa before Nishmat, we will do, and then we will understand. It says that the angels wove for them 3 crowns. 3 crowns. And 1 crown for God, and 2 crowns for the people. I'm sorry, I should correct that. They wove 2 crowns. One corresponding to Nasa, another corresponding to Nishma. Then he compares it to another statement where they talk about 3 crowns. And this becomes the central theme, the crown. What is the meaning of a crown? And especially in Kabbalistic language, if you're familiar with some of the Kabbalah, Keser it refers to a spiritual level called the crown. But to put it into simple English and apply it to some ideas that I'd like to share, and I'm going to hear, as I said, a lot more, so this is just, we'll call this an opening act, is this. One of the big challenges in life, and today, we have the language called the interface. Ayin Beis in many ways is a book of interfaces. What is an interface? Interface is really simply, as the name implies, it's a bridge that connects 2 worlds. So we need interfaces today. For example, the first interfaces created in the computer generation was basic computer language. So today that's almost extinct, except by a few programmers. But basic language was essentially taking zeros and ones, which is the essential language of computer language in its purest form, zeros and ones in different fashion order, and creating a language that can actually be somewhat comprehensible, and in turn write programs that create the different applications and the different benefits that we take advantage of. Once new interfaces were created. Windows. What was the concept of Windows? It was essentially another interface. Instead of any one of us having to deal with basic computer language, made it available to us through a series of windows that you could open up. You press a key, an A, a B, a C. We all know you're not actually making an impression of an A, as it was in the good old days, a linotype. A linotype was essentially a big, I don't know if you ever see a linotype. These big monstrosities. I remember seeing them. My father was a journalist, so I remember visiting him in the newspapers of old. So back in the 80s, and even not 80s, the 70s for sure, early 80s even, before they called it the coal type, it was a linotype. So a guy would be sitting on a keyboard, but the keyboard was actually engraving letters. That was called typesetting. They set type. So there was a big vat of hot boiling lead. They put these bars of lead hanging on a chain. I know it sounds archaic, but this is how it worked for hundreds of years. And the lead would go into this vat. This hot lead would then, when you'd make the impressions, would cool down, and you'd have a line of type. So every line on a page was essentially a line of type that was typed by someone, actually engraved in lead, that would then dry, would then cool off. And then there were the people who took these lines of type and were able to read backwards, almost like a mirror image. And they would create these pages. So a page of a newspaper was like maybe a size a little smaller than this, the size of a newspaper, with these lines of type. And then someone would proofread it. Then they would take paper and put ink on those type, and that's how you print it. It's the essential essence of a printing press. But what happened was electronically, we learned how to create an interface and create different levels that we can today press a key, and that key translates quickly, instantaneously sends messages. Those messages in turn produce, and we have the magic of what we would call technology today. And if you really think about it, no one really even thinks about these things today. It's all automatic. I remember the first days of the computer, and I was telling a colleague of mine, a much older man who was working in the printing presses for ages. He said to me, I cannot trust computers. He says, what's going on? Is there a little man inside the machine? How do they know that's an A or a B or a C? And he couldn't relate it. And I thought, the truth is, I don't get it either. I told him, there's no man in there, but something happens. You press this and it turns into an A. He says, I'm not going to use anything I don't understand. Little did he know that linotypes are also once a technology that no one understood. But at least it's tangible. So, regardless how you understand it, the bottom line is we live in a world of everything is interfaces. Interface between levels of energy that are being translated into matter. That's what's happening every time you strike a key on your keyboard, or touch technology, or your mobile, or whatever it may be. The interfaces. There's probably hundreds of interfaces taking place with touch of one key. So interface is an essential word whenever you're talking about worlds that are disparate. Ayin Beis begins with this concept of interface. So I didn't do research yet, and I am going to, and maybe some of you can help me. Who was the first person that coined the word interface? I don't mean necessarily that physical word. That word may have been used a few hundred years ago in different contexts, but in the world of technology, I would submit there's no question. 1912, you didn't have many people using that word. In Ayin Beis, it's filled with that word. He doesn't use it in Hebrew, in English. He uses it in Hebrew. He uses the word mamutza. Mamutza, or different terms of connecting two worlds. Because you see, one of the major themes of Ayin Beis is how do we interface our lives? The battle between our bodies and our souls, between heaven and earth, between the finite and the infinite. Cosmic questions and personal questions. In our own lives today, for example, here's a simple example. Most of the day, we're busy at work. We're busy with survival. Let's call it with our material needs. And then we also have transcendental needs. The need to get out of the monotony, the daily grind of life. Some of us do that through romance, through love, through music, through art, through travel, all kinds of ways. Through spirituality, through religion. Some find transcendence and relief from the monotony. They're not necessarily healthy means, but we all have this battle. We're in need of an interface. How do you connect your so-called transcendent life with your survival life? So what most of us do is we compartmentalize. Ayin Beis comes to teach us how you don't have to compartmentalize, how you can figure out to build bridges. So another way of calling an interface is building bridges, finding commonality between so-called, as I said, disparate or even opposing forces. This is a central theme. Let's talk on a psychological level. All of us have to deal with certain psychological issues in our lives. Even the healthiest ones, even the healthiest people need to do that. First of all, we're all in need of relationships. Relationships immediately are by definition not just a superficial transaction. Even though many of us would love to maybe have it that way, but it doesn't work that way. That's why you have the coined expression: you can't live with him, you can't live without him, or you can't live with her, you can't live without her. Relationships a double-edged experience. Love brings with it vulnerability. Vulnerability brings with it risk, fears. So love and relationships bring out the best in us, bring out the worst in us. And then when you throw into the equation the world in which we live, where dysfunctionality, some say, is more the norm than the exception, just the question is of how dysfunctional. We all deal with our ghosts, with our demons, with our skeletons. I have a lot of different synonyms for that. With our monsters, with our zombies. And we deal with the voices and the scars and wounds that we carry from childhood. Hopefully not that many, but everybody's got their stuff. And then we have our mothers and we have our fathers. And we are their children, and therefore we've been impacted by them in the most impressionable years. So all of us have to deal with what we call the inner forces of our psyche. Nobody even knows how many billions of dollars, if not trillions, are spent on therapy annually. But it's a lot. Today, having a therapist is just like you need a doctor, you need a dentist, an accountant, and a therapist. It's become common. Our great-grandparents would be appalled about this thing called a therapist. Not because necessarily you're exposing secrets, but I guess in their days they didn't call them therapists, they called them soul doctors. Everyone had their so-called spiritual mentor. What is essentially, let's call it healthy therapy, when I say healthy, productive therapy, it's helping probe forces that are invisible to our eye. Why would you need someone else to help you? Because you can't see it on your own. We have blind spots, we're subjective. People who are trained, and again, I'm not saying every therapist is capable, but those that are, have an ability to perhaps see things that we cannot see with the naked eye. They're probing the unconscious. Now the unconscious, people will say, is words Freud discovered the unconscious. It's not correct. The Kabbalah talks about the unconscious very, very aggressively and very elaborately. And Ayin Beis elaborates on the unconscious. In Hebrew, it's called Chochmas Tima. It's a word from Eitz Chaim that I would say goes back. The first time it's expressed is in the writings of the Arizal, and even earlier in the Zohar. So we're talking about 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago. So I'd like to know, you talk about, Sinai's contributions, just like as I said, Sinai contributed things that nobody did, freedoms and individuality. Unconscious, I'd like anyone to find the word unconscious before the Zohar or before the Arizal. And I'm not saying this to pull rank and to toot the Jewish horn. It's not my intention. I'm just stating it for the record. I think it's important to state. Freud got it from his Jewish roots, not the other way around. He must have had an interesting Jewish mother, who probably had an interesting Jewish mother in turn. And where do you think he learned about unconscious? One day he thought of it, he was standing this? No. I don't know if he learned about it in shul, because I don't think he went to shul. But we know he was obsessed with Moses, because he wrote a book about Moses. Now his take on Moses obviously is one that did not go to yeshiva. You can see that immediately, because he knows very little about Moses. He only knows about it from myths, not from the actual texts. But that's another story. But the ideas of unconscious, as I said, are elaborated at length in Kabbalah, and in Ayin Beis, it's a critical component in the interface, because it's the state of how we connect our conscious lives to our inner lives. And the unconscious is, as he calls it, a valve, like a filter, that filters from the inner part of our non-conscious state of being into our conscious state of being. So this too is a whole fascinating discussion, what this unconscious looks like. Pretty intriguing, wouldn't you say? If you think about this. This is literally issues that we all deal with one way or another. And here you have a book that not only elaborates on it, it's encyclopedic in its form. Now, many of the ideas, I should state in Ayin Beis, were said earlier. because they come from Chassidic thought, they said by the Rebbes before him, all the way to the Rabbi Shneur Zalman, who founded Chabad Chassidic thought. But what he does here is he the compendium of it, the collection of it, all in one organized form. So it's not just a whole bunch of ideas in different places. And once you bring it all together, we know it's more than just encyclopedic. When you bring ideas together, new contradictions, new insights emerge. So this is just, again, a small taste of some of this stuff. And I'm going to, I said, elaborate some more. I just wanted to begin by a little introduction. And another element of interface is conflict management. Two people, whether it's spouses, friends, communities, nations, they have different conflicting interests. What do? How do you resolve? How do you create an interface? A win-win interface. Even basic mediation. So there's an entire section in Ayin Beis that just talks about that at length, of how two people, or two individuals, or two entities that initially may contradict each other, how do you bring them together? And interestingly, he actually talks about 4 different ways of dysfunctionality possible. So we usually think of dysfunctional as, okay, either dysfunctional or you're not. Here's 4 levels. Where one, for example, is dominant and the other one is passive. Where the other one is dominant and this one is passive. Or that they're both dominant, they don't talk to each other. Or that they both collaborate, but the combination is imbalanced. Again, another whole discussion on this that can be developed into a modality on mediation. Education is another interface. When we educate our children, you're basically, how do you take a child, a newborn, or a beginner student, and assimilate and distill information in a way that they could absorb it without being overwhelmed? That requires wisdom. You don't just pour knowledge. You have to go not too fast and not too slow. You go too slow, you don't challenge the mind. You go too fast, you overwhelm the mind. So what's a good interface? Another filter. It's a filter that connects 2 worlds. How we communicate with each other. You can love somebody, but you could also kill them with love. You could spoil them with love. How do you filter love and create an interface, love between 2 people that's not just on your terms, but also on the terms of the recipient? I can go on and on and on, and you'll see everywhere, it all comes down to an art of balance. How do you find that balance? Now, it's easy for one person to just dominate and not consider anyone else, but then you don't have an interface. Then you just have, it's called annihilation. Like the guy that goes on a date, talks about himself for 2 hours. Then he turns to the girl and says, okay, enough about me. Now, what do you think about me? You know? So the first 2 hours was about him talking about himself. Now he wants to hear what she has to say about him. Now, will they ever get to her? Who knows? He's too busy with his narcissism. So narcissism is a perfect expression of an imbalance, of a lack of interface, a lack of communication. I mean, I'm sure you've had dialogues, I can't call them a dialogue. You ever have a conversation with somebody? You can't even call it a conversation. They think it's a conversation. But no matter what you say, they keep going back to their thing, no matter what you say. If you argue with them, they're just like single-minded, this is what I want to say. And when you say, you know something, I just said something that disagrees with what you're saying. And the most infuriating is when they start telling you that, no, that doesn't disagree. What you said agrees with everything I'm saying. And I say to this guy, I said, I disagree with every word you're saying, not only what one thing you're saying. No, you don't even hear what you're saying. Everything you're saying is exactly what I'm saying. That's the best ones. They're telling you, even when you disagree, they're telling you they don't disagree. That means you're a completely non-entity. You know, you can't even argue. You ever have that? Okay. So, we understand dialogue, conversation. Before we even talk about reconciliation or harmony and so-called interconnectivity, the first thing is just have 2 people who listen to each other, even agree to disagree. So interface is wherever you go. I don't want to beat this word to death, but it's a good word because it captures the connection of the things. Now, of course, the ultimate interface is between this universe and God, between existence and transcendence. Because on one hand, you can say, something? We're finite mortal creatures. How could the mortal meet the immortal? And yet, Ayin Beis, this is what he struggles with most. How these 2 ultimately meet. Finding immortality within the mortal, finding mortality in the immortal. And finding a place where they meet. And again, meeting means that they both can coexist, not just coexist, that they both become a symbiosis. So these I'm giving you, sharing with you some of the themes that I've already explored and started writing about. And as I said, I'm putting it all online. summaries, analysis, and to me the exciting part is again the collaboration above all. So I want to choose one topic that is Sinai related, go a little more in depth. Something actually that I've around 2 months ago I started teaching every morning actually, because this is a big epic and I want to cover it. So in this lifetime, I decided I'll teach every morning, and it's recorded and it's up online. So every day there's a new chapter that goes up. So I began, as I said, the discourse is around 1,500 pages. The big around half of it is divided into chapters. So I'm up to now chapter 19 from the beginning, but I also began a second parallel study from chapter 170, and I'm up to 307, just to be specific. And I just wanted to be able to study it from two different angles to just see how it develops. And it's all one big tapestry. Everything is connected with everything. It can be quite overwhelming, so obviously we have to do this in a more of a step-by-step process. Any of you have ever heard of the phenomenon called synesthesia? Anybody knows this idea? Synesthesia. I've talked about this in the past. So actually chapter 19 that I just studied this morning talks about synesthesia in context of Sinai. So let's start with what synesthesia is. Synesthesia, as the word suggests, is synthesis. But it's not just a synthesis. Synthesis is another word for interface, harmony, balance, synthesis. Synesthesia is a name given for a phenomenon. Anybody has synesthesia in this room? You? Yeah? You have to be embarrassed. Synesthesia is a phenomenon proven to be that there are people when they hear a sound, they actually see a color, and when they see colors, they hear sounds. So sight and sound, in the sense of crossed wires. And as a matter of fact, it's not just some type of thing, an illusion, because they see the same color. People with synesthesia, when they hear certain sounds, see the same colors always. And when they see certain colors, they hear different sounds. A famous synesthesiast was, I don't know if that's the right word, enthusiast, was the artist, the Russian Jewish artist, actually Kandinsky. That's synesthesia. Some great artists and musicians have synesthesia. Now, without going to the in depth, I'm definitely not equipped to be able to analyze it in depth, but what I do know is the following. It may sound weird, but it's not so strange today. Again, before we understood the invisible forces that shape existence, this would have sounded strange. Something's the matter with this person. It would be like, I hear a sound and I start seeing things. That's like what's called delusional, right? Or you see something and you start hearing things. You're just seeing it. You're hearing voices? That would be, they usually would have a name for someone like that. But when you think about it, it's not that complicated. What's the difference between sight and sound? Is different waves. This is called air waves, sound waves, and these are called light waves. What do you see when you're looking at me? I'm a few feet away from you. You're clearly not touching me as you would touch yourself. You're seeing light bounce off me, and that light gives you an image. It's so instantaneous, and we take it for granted, but you're really seeing an image. It's light waves. If we shut the light, you wouldn't see me, and I wouldn't see you. So, objects can exist, but light is necessary for traveling, that bounce off, that allow us to see things. And what is sound? I'm speaking a sound, but it's not just the words coming out of my mouth, it's emitting a sound wave. And that wave is reaching you. So these are just two different waves. So why it's not so inconsistent. So usually these two waves each have their own so-called channel. Air waves take their frequency, sound waves have their frequency. We know today there's many more waves. There are microwaves, there are ultraviolet rays, there are infrared. We know today frequencies, for example, on the radio. These are just frequencies. There's FM, there's AM, there's frequencies that are not even used by the public. There are frequencies we don't even hear. An animal can hear a frequency we can't hear. So today it's very clear that right in this room there are all kinds of waves being transmitted. Some we're aware of, most we're not. Some the only way we can aware of when there's a filter. When there's some way that we can, some are dangerous even. Certain waves that are released, let's say, by radioactive material are not exactly something you want to be exposed to. X-ray. X-ray is also a ray. It's a different type of ray. It has its impact. Now these things, most of them are pretty mysterious. Even scientists who understand them don't necessarily understand how they came to be. They just analyze them and they see they work. So the idea that there's two types of rays coming out and somewhere there's a cross of wires, it's not so crazy. Or think of it from a neurological perspective. When you see something, what's happening is besides the light wave that's bouncing off and sending you a message, the eye then, in turn, processes it. The nerves of the eye, the optic nerves, send that message to the brain. The brain tells you this is what it is. It accesses, let's say, memory. And say, you know this image because it's already in your memory. So you meet somebody that you know. What do you mean you know? It means because the eye is telling the brain, here's the image. The brain quickly says, that image you already have stored. That person is Mark Belinsky. Or Simon Jacobson, for that matter. Now, so the plot thickens. What's the difference between what you see right now when you look at me, light wave, and those looking now from cyberspace? They also see me. So you'll say, well, you're in the same room with me. I understand. But bottom line is, you're seeing an image, they're seeing an image. What's the difference between these two images? Is it a snapshot of a snapshot? How would you explain it? Not that simple when you start really thinking about it. Besides the fact, I understand we're in proximity to each other. But listen, let's say we put up a wall right now and all I had was a camera. We don't see me in proximity. You know I'm behind the wall, but you can only see me through a camera. So what is the difference? What is really the difference between seeing an image of someone or the image of an image that is projected through technology? If someone has a good theory, I'd love to hear it. I'm sure a little Googling, we all become pretty smart. The Rabbi, Professor Google. But I didn't really look this up, but I'm sure it's not so simple. I'm sure there's a lot of theories just about that alone. What are we seeing? What are we not seeing? The point I'm making here, this is far more complicated than just my seeing something. So yes, before we knew all this, you say someone hears sounds when they see something, something's the matter with them. Now you think about it, 1 second. What happens if the optic nerve somewhat crosses wires with the audio nerve? What is the ear's nerve called? The ocular nerve? Whatever the nerve is. But let's say they cross wires. And the brain is getting a message from both of them. Then it's completely conceivable. You don't need a miracle. We know today that the brain has can play many games. It was Oliver Sacks who wrote these books like The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. That was not a joke, by the way. There was a guy that did that. The brain, going through different distortions, can suddenly process information in a strange way. As a matter of fact, Einstein said it this way: the most unreasonable thing about existence is that it's reasonable. In other words, the fact that we understand things in a certain way consistently, that is stranger than the fact that every time your brain would process differently. Well, why wouldn't you perceive, I want to say it's a little derogatory, perceive your wife as a hat. Let's say to perceive your husband as a hat. Why every time we look at an orange, does it look like an orange and not like an apple? She'll say, 1 second, this is an orange, this is an apple. Well, I'm talking about the brain and its ability to process. And the fact is, your brain can play games. And a person can manipulate. Magicians, sleight of hand and other things, illusions, optical illusions. You see this all the time. An optical illusion essentially is playing around with the way your brain is processing stuff. Where you'll think the physical eye, naked eye, looks this way. When you really measure it, it's something else. Etc., etc. The point I want to go back to is the synesthesia. So when is the first documentation of synesthesia? So I didn't look this up, but I think scientifically it's relatively new, last century. Because as I said, before that, anyone that said that they heard sounds when they saw something was either locked up or classified as a nutcase. It wasn't seen as today we have a diagnosis for everything. But the first case of synesthesia is at Sinai. And it's actually a verse in the Torah, in the chapter Yisro, that we will read this coming Sunday, when we read the 10 Commandments. And the verse goes like this: that when the Jews stood at Sinai, it was a fireworks show. There was a lot of sound and a lot of light. It was a light and sound show. Then there was a shofar that blasted, and the mountain trembled, and there was lightning and thunder and so on. And it says, Chol Yisrael Royen. They all saw. So the commentaries say, what did they see? It says that they saw the sounds and they heard the sights. That's what it says. Documented that they saw sounds and they heard sights. That is bona fide synesthesia. The question, of course, is why was that necessary? What's the significance of it? And how does it relate to our lives? So I'm going to give you a little taste of Ayin Beis in context of Sinai and Shavuos. And as I mentioned, also the crowns that I described that are connected with what happened at Sinai. Crowns. So what did you say? An interesting thing. So really this comes down to a discussion of the interface between, as I mentioned, that's called the unconscious and the conscious. The interface between what we experience on our conscious reality and what we experience internally. And I just want to, before I elaborate more, I want to just preface one important thing. Different people process same events in different ways. Like if somebody insults you, you may react one way, another person may react a different way. Some of us have, for example, a lot of rage inside of us, anger. And you press the right buttons, or the wrong buttons, depends on how you look at it. This person will have an outburst. Rage, anger. Another person, you press the same buttons, and they won't react the same way. Obviously, what's the difference? What is the obvious difference? The obvious difference is not just how we're wired, it's usually what we've experienced. Rage often, I'm just using that as an example, often is an expression that we saw in our childhood. If one of our parents, one of their tools they used to express themselves was rage, after a while a child begins to assimilate that is a viable option. That's what you do when someone upsets you. You yell, you scream, you throw things, you get physical. No one's born that way. That's something we pick up. We pick up a reaction that someone had. Now, yes, there are exceptions. They say that there are people born with certain situations, certain angry gene, stuff like that. But first of all, it's rare. It's not that common. And that too, one wonders whether it's an angry gene or it's also part of nurture, nature. It's not really that relevant to the discussion. The bottom line is that we are wired in different ways. Now, when you look at two people when they're quiet in a room, you may not see the different forces at work because it's all behind the scenes. It's when something happens, something provocative, some challenge. And then this one reacts this way, this one that way. So something that happens to us all the time. Things that upset you. You wake up one morning, beautiful morning, today's going to be a great day. And then you get a phone call, or you get to work and some obnoxious person, and they say, I destroyed your whole day. It'll be like, destroyed your day. Now, how could someone destroy your day? Why aren't you strong enough to stand up and say, it was going to be a great day, it should be a great day? So we can analyze that many ways. Are we a victim of circumstances? Do we have that type of strength or not? But the bottom line is that you had a plan and it was messed up. We're dealing constantly with all these types of forces that we're mostly unaware of. Now, when do we go for help? Is when things are really hitting rock bottom. Relationships don't work out. I'm dating and dating and dating. I can't meet the right guy or girl. So at some point, we get desperate or we're frustrated enough and we say, what am I doing wrong? What's the matter with me? And here too, you'll have people who start blaming themselves and feeds into all their lack of self-esteem. Something must be really the matter with me. Nobody wants me. Others go the other extreme. They blame everybody else but themselves. And a balanced interface, which is like looking at something a little soberly. What am I doing wrong? And what are others doing? Is a little harder to do. It's easier to go to extremes. All this is based on inner wiring that you can call the unconscious, that shapes and defines who we are. So this concept of synesthesia is not just a nice, interesting, so-called Ripley's Believe It or Not thing. It actually helps us understand how we're wired, how we work. I'll take it a step further. Music today is a very strong force. People listen to music. Music has become a very popular medium. Not only due to technology and the ease of distribution and the instruments that we have, whether it's iPods or whatever it is that today that you can just listen to music anytime, anywhere. But I submit, as I've discussed here many times, I think music has replaced for many people religion in some way. What was once a synagogue or a cathedral today is a rock concert. Especially if those that went to Grateful Dead concerts know that it was a pilgrimage. They make like a pilgrimage to the Holy Temple. And just like in the Holy Temple there was incense and offerings brought, so same is true. Certain concerts also have a form of offerings, sometimes called keteris, right? Some form of incense, legal or illegal, but it's some substances. And definitely transcendence. We call music soul. You can unplug your particular headphones in your ears, or your headset over your ears, all the different forms, and shut everything off, and music surrounds you. This is what's always called a spiritual experience. It's almost like ecstatic. Not getting into whether it's escape or not escape, but it's an experience. Now, what does music do to you when you hear music? Well, it can take a rather drabby day, or even a miserable day, and you suddenly put on music. At least, some, as they say, some dance to remember, some dance to forget. Some sing to remember, some sing to forget. So what music does is something, it stimulates some stuff inside of us. I say stuff, whatever you want to call it. Adrenaline, hormones, chemicals, dopamine, whatever they call it, in the brain that starts spilling out and makes you feel better. Or it stimulates memories. Or transports you to another time and place. I mean, the different things music does. Now, when we listen to music, we're not really interested in the scientific theories. It does what it does. I'm not interested in necessarily hearing a theory. Why is a theory important? Because you want to know, can I access that even when I'm not listening to music, if I can't listen to music? Can I generate such energy inside of me that's not through another experience, that I can actually will it? That if I wake up in the morning and I say I want to have a good day, I can actually play music and sing music and dance internally, because I know how to access the same thing that music touches inside of us. That's why a discussion like synesthesia, or in general about the inner workings of a human being, are so relevant. Now, obviously, if your life is doing well, most people don't dig when things are going well. Why should they? Everything is great. They take it for granted. It's called the comfort zone. But, firstly, honest people who are really searching with integrity for something, always looking for more. But more importantly, most of us, life does not always work out exactly as we like it. And when things are not going well, that's usually when we do dig. So Ayin Beis is as I said, a discourse, more than a discourse. It's an epic discussion that talks about these inner workings. So let's go back, now return to the synesthesia thing. Mount Sinai was meant to be, as I said earlier, a historical moment that changed the world forever. And here's the thing. Einstein, in the theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. This is considered one of the most revolutionary, breakthrough, pioneering ideas. Now you know what E equals mc squared? E is energy and m is matter. Matter multiplied by c squared, the speed of light, etc., with the different measurements, that equals energy. The main innovation here is that energy and matter are reversible. And that was not known before, or seemingly not known. Energy was energy, matter was matter. That today we know there's no such thing as matter without energy, there's no such thing as energy without matter. All energy can be converted into matter, all matter can be converted into energy. Just a question of volume and question of the circumstances. You heat up something, high enough heat, or speed it up fast enough, and you can generate tremendous amounts of energy, unfathomable levels. That's where you can take a follicle of a hair and learn through nuclear fission or fusion, you can destroy the world. That's what an atomic reaction is. And a nuclear reaction is even more powerful. It's through high speeds that uranium and other metals that are able to generate either high speeds or high levels of heat that can actually split an atom. You cannot do that with your hands. You can't just take, let's say, a rock or a nut you can throw and crack into two. An atom is too subatomic, too small for us to do something. So it can only be done through heat or through speed, or through forces that break it apart. And when you break it apart, a tremendous amount of energy is released. So for a man to see that, to recognize something that was invisible, no one saw the atom, was a big innovation. Now, not take anything away from Einstein, because he definitely discovered it in a formula form, and something that could be replicated, that has been proven. Not only been proven, we have as a result energy today, and we have today technologies that are a direct result of this discovery. But conceptually, Einstein, when he was asked, how did he come up with the idea? So he was a postal clerk. And basically his genius is attributed not to the fact that he was necessarily the most brilliant physicist per se, but he thought out of the box. He didn't think how conventional physicists thought. So he was able to devise something, imagine something. He first had imagination before he was a scientist. You can be a scientist and by the book, know everything by book, but have no imagination. You're not going to think of a new theory. You'll be a master of the systems that exist. As Einstein himself said it, he said, to change a system, you have to go out of the system. Some attribute it to his being a Jew, by the way. Being a Jew meant he had to defy all the discrimination, had to find creative, innovative ways to survive. He had to escape Berlin because of Nazi propaganda. So that idea that you have to fight, you have to become innovative, many attribute to that the Jewish seichel. Well, here you have the catch-22. Some people say because of Jewish seichel, that's why we're discriminated against. Some say because we're discriminated, that's why we get the seichel. So you go figure out where it begins. So the fact is that when you're pressured, like an olive does not produce oil until you press it. The same thing with the mind. You pressure it, it innovates ideas. What is the father of all creation, of all inventions? War. The war machine. Because war, as sad as it sounds, because it's about life and death, it is single-handedly innovated more inventions than any other vehicle in history. Airplanes, smart technologies, and so on. So it's true, not a close second, a distant second may be the exploration of outer space that was to satisfy human curiosity, but it doesn't come close to the machinery, to the innovations that war produces. Because that type of need to win, pride, the fact that you have a competition, an enemy on the other side, it's life and death, gets you thinking. Just to give you one example, we have what's called the belt, Pan's belt. A belt is an innovation during World War I. They were looking for ways to mass produce many uniforms. Suspenders were very unwieldy, so someone came up with the belt. The first belts were devised in the American Army in World War I. I'm just giving you one example, but there are hundreds and hundreds. So this is not advocating war, obviously. It's just trying to demonstrate that when you're under pressure, you innovate. Ayin Beis was written in 1912. There was a lot of pressure. The Russian Revolution was coming, World War I would come, World War II would come, and a great visionary foresees. So you have the illness, cure precedes the illness. So Ayin Beis is written with in mind the challenges that were to come. We would see the worst of mankind and the best. Literally the worst. The bloodiest century, the bloodiest several decades was World War I, World War II, hands down. Over 100 million people killed. Hundreds millions more displaced, wounded. It ravaged Earth, basically. And all, what? In the name of what? Arrogance, hubris. Ubermensch is what the Nazis saw themselves, as supermen. And they fell to subhuman behavior worse than anyone before them. All in the name of advancement, technology, and so on. And then the second half of the 20th century, in retrospect, it's almost miraculous. You see the best of people. The technologies, the medicines, the freedoms. Look at what's been going on. It's accelerating. I'm not suggesting we live in a perfect world, but you saw the best and the worst side by side. So you can imagine a visionary, a person who's concerned about the human condition, is struggling with this. How do you reconcile this? The Titanic, which today still keeps us mesmerized, captured the mood of 1912. Titanic proportions, opulence, self-confidence. It was at the height of the benefits of the Industrial Revolution. And then the Titanic sank on its maiden voyage. I mean, it doesn't get more, and that shocked the world because it was like it burst the bubble. But the sinking of the Titanic was just the beginning. A lot more would sink before the sun would rise again. As I said, World War I, World War II. So you can imagine a man like the Rebbe Rashab was sitting and wondering and exploring how to look at this and to give us a blueprint that addresses these challenges. So going back to on a personal level, so the forces that shape us are critical in understanding who we are. And especially when we have the blessings of our times and we see the worst and we see the best. As I mentioned before with relationships, we must understand ourselves on a deeper level if you want to get control of your life. So the concept of energy and matter being reversible that Einstein discovered in physics was always a principle in Jewish thought, but it was never seen quite in the same light and the same power as we can see it today. Ayin Beis is a central theme. How does energy and matter meet? The language he uses is energies and containers. Another word, energy and matter, or soul and body, or spirit and matter. But it goes back to Sinai again. And we could appreciate Sinai today more than ever because there's an interesting medrash that is cited. It says, now up till Sinai, there was a schism, a gzera, a decree and a schism that separated heaven from earth, matter from spirit. And this schism stated, that which is in the world of spirit remains in the world of spirit. That's in the world of matter remains in the world of matter. In the words of the Medrash, El Yenim La Yardu L'Tachtenim, that which is above does not come down below. That which is in the spiritual world does not come down to the material world. V'Tachtenim La Yala L'Mayla, and that which is in the lower material world does not rise to the spiritual worlds. Two separate worlds. In Kehelet, the expression is Hashemayim, Shemayim LaHashem. Heaven is for God. And the earth was given to mankind. Now, two different worlds. This world, master the art of earthiness, make a living, figure out how to make money, maneuver, navigate. The world of spirit is a different world. Then it says, the Medrash continues, but then came Sinai. And Sinai destroyed the schism. Bitla Gzeira it's called. It created an interface. It says when God came down on Mount Sinai and Moses went up on the mountain, these two met. Heaven and earth met for the first time, and never would it return. So the first time matter and energy could connect with each other. So what was planted 3,324 years ago became a reality almost more than 3,000 years later in Einstein's E equals MC squared. So in Sinai, it wasn't discussed in a level of physics or science. It was a concept. But concept is a concept. If Einstein had read that medrash, and he was thinking what he was thinking, he would have immediately applied it. So that's why I'm suggesting when you read these ideas, yes, they're not written in the language of medicine or science or physics, but they're concepts that are exactly the same. They're just a parallel. It's an idea. And ideas, when you begin to play with them, suddenly take on shape in different idioms. Most great ideas, if you trace them, will always go to something that was an idea before, but no one ever thought about it in this context. You only thought about it in that context. No one comes up with there's no such thing as an original idea, period. Every idea, that's not even considered a virtue. Original ideas, period, are usually not nonsense. Like the guy that wrote his long dissertation his entire life, presented it to the wizards of the world, and they studied it, and he's waiting, anticipating to hear what they're going to say. It's his lifetime work. They come back and they say to him, Mr. whatever your name is, Mr. Professor, the consensus is that your paper is both good and original. So he's so relieved, not relieved, he's ecstatic. That's from his peers. He says, but then his heart falls when the guy says to him, the only thing is that we also concluded that the part that's good is not original, and the part that's original is not good. So it's good and original. Okay? Which means that the most original things are actually based on principles that were always there, but no one noticed, or no one applied it to this situation. This concept of E equals mc squared, the concept of energy and matter being reversible, began at Sinai. And what was the point? The point was that God said at Sinai, I give you the power now that you can spiritualize the material world. They don't have to remain at odds, at tension. You can spiritualize the material world, and you can take physical world and take earth and turn it into heaven. And you can connect heaven and you can create an interface. Whenever that light goes out, I think like somebody's listening up there. So, that's principle. So therefore, one of the reasons at Mount Sinai there was a form of synesthesia, was to demonstrate that even though things are different worlds, at times you see that there's a connection. You know, one of the greatest things psychologically in life is hope. Like if you've given up, you have despair, situation, you're resigned, you try this, you try that, it's never going to work. So, what's the solution to that? To just tell somebody it's going to work? The worst part is when you give up hope. Because you give up hope, then there's nowhere to turn. So what you'd like to do is not necessarily tell someone a solution, but don't give up. Leave room that maybe 1% chance. Because if you give up that, then you won't even be looking, and even if something comes your way, you won't see it. You won't want to see it. You've already come to your conclusion. So that's why sometimes in experiences in life, you know, something happens to us that's like a magical moment. You didn't expect it. Its real purpose is not for you to have magical moments, to show you that you don't know much, and that you never know where something's going to come from. At Sinai, there was experience of synesthesia to show that there is an ability to see things a different way. So collectively, they saw the sights, they saw the sounds, and they heard the sights, to teach us that even though usually you see things, there's an ability to reach a deeper place where things connect. You know, a little while before Sinai, there was the split parting of the sea. Actually, a little while, to be exact, 42 days before. You know, they left Passover. 7 days later was the parting of the sea, and then what came 43 days later was Sinai. 42 days later. Parting of the sea, as you may know, was not necessary. Look at a map and show me if there's a sea between Egypt and Israel. Today there's a Suez Canal, but there were no canals then. There was no sea. So why couldn't the Jews just travel from Egypt right to Israel? God had to take them south to a place of a sea to create a miracle that they would walk through this parting sea. I'm like, what is that? And if he wants to get rid of the Egyptians, there's other ways to do that. So the Kabbalah and Chassidus explain, because the parting sea wasn't just some type of nice trick. It was to demonstrate that sea and land, which are two worlds, unconscious and conscious, can join. And that you never know what kind of powers a human being has. So the idea that something happens that's different teaches us that there's always ability to reach a deeper place. What we see is not what we get. We live in a world where you can convince yourself that you know the rules, you have it all figured out. And that could become your biggest enemy. Because you will not be open to another possibility. You think you have it figured out. So let's talk about a New York popular theme. It's called single life. Okay? So the Talmud says that finding your soulmate is as difficult as parting the sea. Why? Because men and women are like sea and land. There was a popular book, it was called Mars and Venus. The Kabbalah would call it more like sea and land. They function differently. Men are land mammals. Women are sea creatures. And there are many similarities. For a woman, love is like water. It's a noun. It's a state of being. For a man, it's like taking a drink. It's an experience. It's a verb. It's a big difference. Now they could learn from each other, but there are certain things, certain wiring that's different. So therefore, you could say, well, it's almost as impossible as parting the sea. Now, if you ever haven't been in a real relationship, you know it is like that. But with one difference, the parting the sea is only once. Here you have to part the sea every day, or every second. Mark and Rebecca, is that true? No, that means you can love each other, but there's a certain mystery behind it all. Right, mystique. I'm using our popular couple as a kosher guinea pigs, the laboratory of relationships. Anyway, and if you really dissect it, that two strangers who have different interests, grew up with different personalities, that should be able to coexist under one roof, even if one squeezes the toothpaste from the middle of the tube and the other from the bottom, that's a miracle. That's like the parting of the sea. Because think of the odds. It's much easier for them to be at war with each other than to be at peace with each other. Because they're living together all the time. We're not talking about they get together once a year. You know that couple that so busy they would put two careers? Or today you have two couples, you have almost three careers. So these are two careers, they're full-time busy. They've come to realize that, they have no time for each other. And they better make some time. After all these years. So obviously we're not communicating well because we never have time for each other. So they both look at their calendars, let's schedule a date. We're going to get together, spend all day together. We'll go to the country, take a long trip. He looks at his calendar, okay, what about 2 years from now on Tuesday or something? She says, no, I'm busy. So 3 years from now on a Monday, they find the date. And she says, in the afternoon or in the morning, you know that joke. I'm making one joke, it's a joke within a joke, but let's not go there. So finally the big day comes, they're both excited, and they pack up. The day, they took care of everything else, they're going to be alone, no distractions. Unplugging. But as God would have it, of course, luck would have it, they get into a fight right before they get into the car. And of course, being strong-headed, they both will not give in. And everything is packed. This is a day they've been waiting for. It's like turning into a disaster. They start driving, and both of them will not break the ice. Nobody's going to speak. So they're driving and driving and driving. They finally get up to the mountain somewhere, and the guy sees through the window. He looks out in the field. He sees a bunch of mules. What do we call them? Jackasses, donkeys. They're known for their obstinance. So he turns to his wife. After 3 hours of no talking, she says, any relation of yours? So she says, without missing a beat, yes, by marriage. Okay. So hopefully that made the day better. I don't know what the end of the story was, but you can imagine it probably didn't work out that well. If you haven't spoken for 5 years, and then you make a day, it's not necessarily going to be that easy. There's a lot of pressure. The point I'm making here is that yes, to bring two people together is not a simple matter, because you're bringing worlds together, and I'm talking about a healthy relationship. A dysfunctional relationship, where one dominates and the other one is completely acquiescent, or the other way around, it's another story. But talking about a healthy relationship, two people who are individuals, have opinions, are healthy, it's not that simple. How does it work? And many people feel it's impossible, especially long term. Two people married for 50 years and they'll still love each other. For some people, they can't even imagine such a thing. So initially, we right away say, okay, if you meet really maybe the special one, it'll be that way. Or you start dismissing and say, okay, they're probably desperate, that's why they had no one else, so they stuck with each other. However you analyze it. So the point that I'm making here is that hope is a critical component here, because it's the message that you don't have it figured out. What do you think you have it figured out? Because you decided that these two things are opposites or don't work, that's why they don't work. Synesthesia is a reminder that what you see is not what you get. And any one of us that ever has reached deeper into our own souls know this to be a truth. Like I mentioned before with music. What does music really do? It brings you to a place that you can't get to on your own so easily. And reminds you, and hopefully it does give you hope. So the idea is, and this is what he explains in Ayin Beis in this section that I'm studying now. You can listen to it, it's online. within the text, explained in detail, explains that there's two dimensions to our human faculties. There's the way the human faculties manifest in a very tangible way. Your eyes, you see things. Your ears, you hear things. But then there's how these faculties are within your spirit and soul. Remember, a corpse cannot see and not hear. So all these faculties come from the soul in some way. But how do they rest? How do they dwell in the soul? So he explains that they're much more in an abstract and in a nebulous form. So in a sense, they're able to dwell. Sight and sound can dwell together. Let me give you an example. How many ideas fit into your brain, which is around the size of your palm? Brain, how many ideas? So your hard drive on your computer, there's a limit. 10 gig, 100 gig, a million gig, what comes after a gig, whatever it is. There's a limit, and then you run out of space. You need another hard drive where you got to erase something. Huh? Terabytes, right. So today, what do you have? 2, 3, 4, that's the... 1,000 gigs is a terabyte, right? Yeah. So, how much a brain? How many terabytes in the brain? We have no clue. So how many ideas can rest in something this size? You have to say ideas take up different... They don't take up space as we know it. Because if it's inches or millimeters are still a measurement. There's only that many millimeters that can fit into a certain space. Why is this so relevant? Because it tells us that there's a dimension within us that has much more possibilities than you can ever imagine. Don't define your life based on your empirical tools. One of the physicists, who was it? I forgot his name was... I forget the name right now. He was asked about some of these bizarre conclusions that they were coming up with in quantum mechanics. He said, no one ever even measured. No one can even see an atom. We don't even know what an atom looks like, let alone subatomic particles or sub-subatomic particles. And those images that we got in science in high school, that looks like a cluster of grapes that are black and white, and there's electrons surrounding them. That's just a functional example, just for us to be able to imagine it. No one has any idea that it looks like that. So he says, so how did you come to these conclusions? Conclusions that have real implications. And he gave this great example of a fisherman that spread a fish, his net across all the 7 seas, and came up with all types of fish. This size, this color, this species, that species. And then he came to his major conclusion. What's his conclusion? There are no fish in the sea that are shorter than a half-inch long. Brilliant. Why? Because all his documentation, there's not one fish that's shorter than a half-inch. So there's no fish in the sea that's shorter than a half-inch. He needed his little child, like the emperor, no clothes, to tell him, my father, you're a big professor, but let me see the net. He looked at the net. The net had ropes that were spaced half-inch. So all the fish that were shorter than a half-inch fell back into the sea. So this great scientist, what he should have said was, when you use a net that has half-inch spaces, you're never going to find fish that are shorter than half-inch long, but you don't need a scientist for that. That's pretty obvious. In other words, his limitation was his instrument. And he came to a conclusion based on a limited instrument. This is the first thing I'll tell anyone that comes to me for help, counseling or advice or anything, especially if they're in despair. Your worst enemy is you're convinced that your instruments define reality. Just because something didn't work for you, or just because you see it a certain way, that doesn't mean that's reality. That's maybe the most important lesson of all technology. We don't know what's going on. We have very little to know what's going on. The mysteries, the depths of human power are far more than anyone can ever imagine. Do you know how much potential you have? Could you even tell me? Can you say, well, you know what, I've actualized 10% of my potential. 1%, 5%. The first thing you have to qualify is saying you don't even know what the potential. You can't make a percentage until you know what the total is. Maybe you haven't even actualized 1.000.1% if your potential is so enormous. So where do we come to these conclusions from? It comes from, first of all, sometimes limited intelligence. A child thinks there's nothing else in the world except its cubicle. That's one thing. Another place it comes from is insecurity. And the third place it comes from our own because of our insecurity, we have to convince ourselves that we have it all worked out. I'm not trying to suggest that we have to knock ourselves the things we've understood, but the mysteries of life we know very little about. So what he says there in this Ayin Beis is the following. The faculties, they function a certain way. That's the structure of existence. But there's a whole level of a substructure. What's the word I want to use? The internal, beyond the structure, that has whole types of other capacity. And one place it was expressed was the Synesthesia and Mount Sinai. You saw there that the faculties can cross wires. You saw the faculties are not quite what they seem. That means that you may see something and you may see no opportunity there, but you're seeing with your naked eye. If you're able to see with wiser eyes, you'd see something that the naked eye cannot see. In other words, there's a whole level of potential, there's a whole level of unity even, that is there, that is not visible on a conscious level. And that's what Sinai came to teach us. So that in itself, and I'm simplifying it, I'm not going into the whole depth of the discussion, because the real question that he asks is, what exactly was going on there, and what goes on in that level where it's not so, where it's more quantum-like, where we're not so sure. He gives an example, for instance, an idea, a concept. In its abstraction, it can be interpreted in several ways, even contradictory ways. So a teacher may share an idea, and two different students, one will take out of it something one way, one interpretation, the other will take an opposite interpretation. And they're both in a way right. When you go back to the original idea, it allows for both possibilities. This is sometimes used to talk about dream interpretation. Dreams are a certain amorphous voice from the unconscious. The Talmud says something fascinating. It says every dream, there's no dream without nonsense, and every dream has some deeper truths. The problem is we don't know which is which. And then it says that every dream follows its interpretation. In other words, when you interpret a dream, you're actually giving it reality. That means there are things that, if you did not define it, it would remain undefined. When you define it, you're giving it a reality. It's like someone, they say about an ayin hara, the evil eye. Does it affect us? So some people say it only affects those that believe in it. You give power to your own enemies by being weak. When you project something, you create a reality it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this has a lot to do with what our potential is. And Ayin Beis is very concerned with helping us understand of how you do not ever trap yourself into what you perceive. You perceive what you perceive, and then there's a whole other dimension, many dimensions, that can help you understand things on a different level. And then the challenge is, how do you interface between the two? How do you live in this concrete, tangible world, and yet hold on to dreams, or hold on to a state of being that is beyond the structure? In other words, how do we bridge the structure and beyond structure? And that's not so easy to do, but there's a formula. There are many formulas for it. So I welcome you all to this Ayin Beis revolution, which, as I said, begins this Shavuos, is the Centennial, 100 years from 1912. Just for a little historical record, the discourse was delivered and written by the same Rebbe, and it wasn't published till 35 years ago in its original Hebrew, but till this day it still remains pretty much a locked secret. And I think it's very exhilarating, exciting to be able to do something to help uncover these secrets. It's always that little joy that we all have when you're like a kid and you suddenly dig and you suddenly discover like a treasure chest, what's inside it. So here we have the opportunity to dig into as I said, a pioneering and trend-making treatise that has the ability to really teach us insights that are truly life-changing, and also on a scientific and on other modalities that I mentioned to help us understand things in new ways. So for me, it's a great honor to be able to help be part of spearhead this. As I said before, I welcome you all into this. And so, being that the discourse just begins for us, would continue on for several years. So I'm sure you're going to hear about Ayin Beis more than once from me, at least. And as I said, you could already check out some stuff that's online. And I do, as I again reiterate, I'd love to hear your feedback. And though it's like in a way climbing Mount Everest, but every mountain, every journey begins one step at a time. So don't be overwhelmed by it. It's just a matter of doing it step by step, and together I think we can do some very interesting stuff. It would be beautiful to be able to, as I said, develop some new modalities that can really help this larger world in which we live, and also our personal lives. So I'll be exploring time to time, maybe these classes as well, but definitely online, the morning classes I give, different themes of this glorious epic, and hopefully we can really find some new approaches to life, formulas. Since we're talking about interfaces, I should also say algorithms that allow us to develop new formulas of improving life. So to conclude on a Shavuot lesson, as I said, on the practical level, it means that we do not have to have compartmentalized lives. We could find a way to balance our work and our personal lives, our relationships, and the other demands on us. We do not have to resign ourselves to the bare minimum, but can really touch heaven itself. And Shavuos teaches us that heaven kissed earth and earth kissed heaven. So it teaches us that each of us here can find that right soulmate. Matan Torah was compared to marriage. So I guess Kriyas Yamsuf, which is like compared to a shidduch, was the dating process. So it's difficult as parting the sea. And then, once they got through that part, they actually were able to marry. So Sinai is compared to a marriage. The mountain was like a canopy, and it's a marriage between heaven and earth, between God and the people, between all of us. So it's a great opportunity to bless everybody, to find their soulmate, and don't give up. Don't think that you've already hit a dead end. And overall, it's not just marrying an actual soulmate, it's also rediscovering your own soul. And that you have inside of you an indomitable spirit, a force that is indispensable and has enormous power. And if you learn how to tap into it, it can really help improve every aspect of your life, literally every aspect. So Shavuot is a good time to renew this contract. I said I discussed it from the lens of Ayin Beis, but it can be applied in many different ways. It's customary, this year Shavuot is Sunday and Monday, so it's customary Sunday we read in the Torah the 10 Commandments. So it's a good idea for people to hear those commandments. It says that when you stand by the reading of the Torah, the Medrash says, Psikta, that it's like recreating Sinai anew, this moment again. And the Talmud actually says, just as it was then, that they stood with awe and fear and trembling and respect, so too today we stand. So we recreate the same Sinai experience again and again. And the language we say is the blessing that we make when we called up to the Torah, and we say every morning, Baruch atah Noisan HaTorah. In Hebrew, Noisan HaTorah means in the present, not that Nosan, that we bless God that gave us the Torah in the past. We bless God Noisan that gives us the Torah, because it's a renewed experience every moment anew. Not just the giving of the Torah, but above all the fusion of matter and spirit, the fusion of the different conflicting forces and voices in our lives. So, if you're a person that has more than one voice, raise your hand. We all have more than one voice, right? Or else we would be in bliss. We have different voices. We have our mind, our heart, our soul, our body. We have the different voices that conflict to tell us it's good for us, it's not good for us. So as soon as you have conflicting voices, you know there are different forces at work. So Sinai, Shavuos, teaches us how to fuse them without compromising one or the other. You could actually have the best of both worlds. And that requires, of course, a deeper understanding, entering into the engineering room where it all gets wired. So synesthesia is one example of how the wires cross in order to teach us the potential that we have. Another example is like mindset. A child, because their mind is still pliable and still impressionable, so a child understands something, you can tell a child, you know what, there's another way to look at it. The older a person gets, the harder it is for them to hear it's another way to look at it. Because they're convinced they already have it figured out. After all these years, I've developed my ideas. And the smarter they are, the harder it is for them to see another perspective. But that's the key to keeping young and to keeping flexible, to keeping resilient, is that you know how to bend, you know how to yield, you know how to stretch your mind, not be trapped by preconceived notions, not be trapped even by notions that you've fully developed. Always keeping that fresh way of looking at things. You know what? I'm always always mood of another adventure. So, stay adventurous. Don't get too trapped. As our arteries harden, don't let your mind harden with it. And don't let your perspectives. Always keep open the fact that there's a bridge, an interface between your unconscious and conscious. And as locked as your conscious may be, there's a channel that's open to deeper places, new ideas, new perspectives, fresh way of looking at things. Just start with that, and you already have hope in your life. That alone can be a tremendous new beginning. So I hope I'm able to convey that to all of you, that do not get locked into anything that you think that's it. You know, keep the door open, fresh air, fresh perspectives. All infections fester in closed, under closed doors, when things are locked. You bring in fresh air, there's an opening, there's healing, there's another way to look at it, another perspective. So with that, I wish everybody a very meaningful Shavuos, Matan Torah, fusion, and celebrating the Centennial of Ayin Beis. I welcome you all again into this club that maybe we can make 7 billion strong. And we will be here next week. I'll continue this class next Wednesday. After Shavuos, we'll continue the discussion. And please, if I could be of any help to anyone in their personal journey and their fusion in whatever fashion, don't hesitate to call upon me or Velvel or any of the staff in the Meaningful Life Center. I believe Philip will be giving his class tomorrow night. And I want to again say the class is dedicated to Yehudit Bat Yisrael, the beloved mother of Steve Lazarus, who's passed away today. And if you haven't left your email address, please leave so we can stay in touch. Do we have copies of Beyond the Letter of the Law here? What? Do? Good. You sure? You seem undecided. You know, like I used to think I'm undecided. Now I'm not so sure. That's right? And also, we're coming to the last days of the counting of the Omer. So that's a journey of its own. 49 days of refining. So feel proud that you were able to refine yourself, and I'm sure you're all much more sensitive and compassionate human beings. Hopefully. But the journey continues even after someone called me the other day and said, can they start the counting of the Omer Rosh Hashanah, because they missed it here from Shavuos. I said, you can always refine yourself any time of the year. The blessing you only make between Passover and Shavuos. But refinement is a year-round job, and halavai we should be able to ever finish it. And with that, again, everyone have a happy Shavuos. It's an honor to share a few words with all of you and to help us all actualize that infinite potential within our souls. So thank you.